Coming up on UGTV, Standing Committee Meetings of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas. A meeting of the Neighborhood and Community Development Standing Committee. This will be followed by a meeting of the Economic Development and Finance Standing Committee.
I'm not on the committee, but I will.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. Good.
We're all gonna end up being here eventually.
You're going to present tonight, aren't you? The CID?
Yeah, it's not really much of a presentation.
Exactly. Is it the,
No PowerPoint.
it's the Village West Parkway and Parallel project, right?
It's to build to extend the parking garage of Village West.
Yes.
Yeah.
Village West Parkway and Parallel.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Tucked down in a little deep. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, parallels up above.
So, okay. So we've already approved the CA district. This is just to authorize
Issuing the bond.
issuing the bonds that the district will pay for.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep. Fire away. Good questions. Get me ready.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. This is a great project.
That's why I'm not a big fan.
Great. And then the
But
other.
tell me if I need to.
Nope.
I'll run
Well,
upstairs and get the.
Not as far as I'm concerned. And then
There is a
the
PowerPoint.
Rainbow Village IRBs, that's just the actual issuance, because we've now approved the TIF district to pay for them, and the CID and all that. So this is just the formality of issuing.
Oh, this is that. Okay. Yeah.
So we've got two formalities on here, and the third is just a formality, which is the brownfield planning grant. Just allow us to take the money.
You all are just so on top of it. That,
You wonder why
So,
the show value.
well, and we're all here as a team.
I see, is that? We're here, we're ready. All right.
I've been working on it, so I got
some of the
pictures of us saying, yeah, it's first and 5 o'clock starts. The gavel should have gone down.
All right, we're going to call to order the Standing Committee of the Neighborhood and Community Development Standing Committee. Clerk, please read the roll.
Roll call: Walters,
Here.
Regia,
Here.
Townsend,
Here.
McKiernan,
Here.
Walker.
Here. We want to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. We have a somewhat short agenda. If you're wishing to speak on any subject that comes before the committee, approach the podium, state your name, address, and you'll be allowed to speak. We welcome public input. First item on the agenda, apparently we have some revisions to the July 11th, 2016 agenda. Is that correct? Am I in the wrong one? No?
There are none.
There are none? No, I'm sorry. All right, we have the minutes of the May 2nd, 2016 meeting. I assume everyone has had an opportunity to review those. If there are not any corrections, changes, or deletions, a motion would be in order.
Move to approve as submitted. Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes have been approved. We do not have measurable goals on tonight's agenda. The first item is an ordinance amending various construction code sections. Mr. Talkin. I assume you're here to make a presentation, or?
Yes, sir.
All right, would you please proceed?
Good evening, Commissioners, governing body, administration. We are here this evening I've got some staff and support, but I think I'll get through this on my own, but I may have to call them up if there's any specific questions. We are pursuing the adoption of new codes and standards. We do that approximately every 6 years. This year's just a little bit different. We're pursuing the adoption of the 2012 standards, which would include 2012 International Building Code, International Fire Code, International Residential Code, Mechanical Code, and we always go with the Uniform Plumbing Code because our partners in the community, the plumbers and everything, they prefer that code, and they're pretty much equal. It's got to do more with a union issue. Then the International Property Maintenance Code, we're also pursuing the adoption of the 2011 National Electric Code, and due to some things going on in the industry, we're staying with the 2009 Energy Code. Purpose for adopting new standards, our main purpose for bringing them forward at this time is we're currently getting ready to go through the flood insurance program reevaluation, and to keep points in that program, we have to stay within 6 years of current code. And so what that program does, it gives insurance breaks to those that need flood insurance. That's a program that's run through the Planning and Zoning Office, but that's a contributing factor out of our office that assists us in getting them a bigger reduction. Also, we're trying to be more in line with the other metro cities, and of course updating standards. Most developers and architects generally prefer updated standards. Older standards are hard to find reference material, and they start designing under the new standards, and the old standards kind of go to the wayside, and they design to those anyway. So, and also it helps our image and perception in the development community. Our process for doing this, we requested participation input. We mailed that out to several of our community partners. There was committees formed. We also talked to other jurisdictions to find out where they're at, especially those in the metro area. We also solicited input from livable neighborhoods on the property maintenance code, which is the items that code enforcement enforces. There were 3 committees that were formed. We had a building and fire codes committee that involved building, fire, plumbing, electrical, and mechanical codes. That committee was made up largely of our staff, UG staff, including the fire department, licensed trade people, architects, engineers, builders, and developers. We developed a residential committee. Those are our residential builders were involved in that process. And we have a property maintenance committee, which involved a lot of some property owners, landlords, neighborhood leaders, and staff. And I have to back up when I say a lot. We actually had very minimal participation this year because we were adopting a standard that was well-known already to the industry. So nobody really proposed a lot of changes to amendments to the standard, and they felt fairly comfortable with everything we were adopting. We also, in looking at across the state and the metro area, we're adopting the 2012 standard, which there is a 2015 out. And the reason why we're staying back one cycle, first of all, the comfort level with the community and the partners. Second of all, nobody's adopting the 2015 for various reasons. And so we're trying to stay kind of similar to all the metro areas, so our codes are similar in nature, so it's easier for those builders and developers to know what we're under. Kansas City, Missouri's under the 2012. They're not pursuing the 2015. Johnson County's, I'm sorry, that is incorrect. They have not adopted the 2015. They are not pursuing the 2015 either. They're under the 2012. And most Johnson County cities are under the 2012 or older versions. Nobody's adopted the 2015. There is only one city that I'm aware of that's adopted the 2015 standard, and that's actually in Wyandotte County. It's Bonner Springs, because they got out of the chute earlier than everybody and didn't realize that they were not going to adopt. Most weren't going to adopt the 2015. So we're trying to stay similar, once again, with what the metro area has adopted. Just one more comment. We did receive, we invited more than 70 people to the table on the Building Codes Committee, which we split up into 2 separate committees after they got together to form the Residential and the Building Codes Committee. Those that were interested in residential went one way. Those that weren't interested in the commercial went the other way. Out of those 70, we've only had 20 participants. That largely the feedback is we don't have any comment of change in those standards. We're used to them. The only one change that we did amendment to the standard itself, the primary amendment in the building code was we did increase an exit distance travel issue that North Point brought to our attention. It was a travel distance issue that was in the 2006 code, and it's in the 2015, but for some reason in the 2012 they reduced it with no other changes in the provision, so we increased it to the distance travel back to what the 2015 required. It helped them on their development of the Amazon announcement as well as another project they have coming forward in the very near future. That's all I have.
Do any of the commissioners have questions?
I just have one. So in terms of permitting and inspection standards, as we compare ourselves to surrounding communities, we're on a par with them. We don't have any extra permitting or inspecting requirements compared. As I'm thinking about contractors and developers who want to come into our area, they wouldn't encounter extra hurdles in Wyandotte County then, right?
The only exception I would say, Commissioner, is some of the very small communities may not have the same requirements, but comparison, I think we're kind of similar to Olathe and all the cities in the metro area, and we have no extra requirements than them. We have a lot less requirements in Kansas City, Missouri.
Okay.
So,
Beautiful. Thank you. That's all I have. I would move to approve as submitted.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Motion to approve all the various updates in the various building codes cited. Would the clerk please read the roll?
Roll call. Walters.
Aye.
Regia.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye. I think that concludes the main
Thank you.
land bank matters, I believe.
I have one other agenda item.
We do?
Number 2, ability to place a lien.
I'm sorry. Okay. Proposed ordinance allowing the UG to put lien on the proceeds of any covered claim for damages. Okay.
Yeah, it's
Good evening.
Sorry, it's in response to the Kansas legislature amending KSA 40-3901, which previously we were only allowed to assert the liens on properties that were storm damaged or wind damaged or fire damaged, and basically the Kansas statute that the ordinance is based on took away those qualifiers, so just now it's applicable to the damage to any structure or structure damage caused by any form of damage.
Okay. Do the commissioners have any questions?
No questions.
Is there a motion? Yeah, Commissioner Townsend?
Thank you. Good evening. You answered one of the questions I have. It looks like our ordinance is taking out specific hazards that were named. Is that what also happened at the state level?
That's correct.
Okay. The other thing that confused me was the definition of what they're calling a covered claim and when this applies. Is it essentially only applicable to people who may have insurance, or what happens if they don't have insurance? At what amount is there a lien assessed? Those are the questions I had as I read this.
This only applies to those individuals that have covered claims and they have insurance in place. There is, of course, certain limitations to that. The claim, I think, has to be 75% of the policy value before it really kicks in, and the mortgage companies have first rights to the dollars that are there in the insurance. But if there's insurance and the other thresholds are met, I can't remember, I believe we get 10% or 15%. It's changed over the years a couple times. We get 15% to hold, and that is sent to the Treasurer's Office, and they communicate with the NRC, and we, through the Code Enforcement Office and Demolition, we use that as bargaining to get either the house repaired or demolished. And once the owner takes care of the problem, we will return those funds to the policyholder. If they do not take care of the problem over time, we can utilize those funds to both take care of the issues as well as pay any back taxes that are due.
Okay. So let's say let's say on my residence, I have property, there's a fire, wind, whatever, flood. I put in for a claim to help take care of the damage. Will the UG get a certain percentage of that claimed amount up front to hold as a lien in case I don't get my property taken care of or repaired?
We provided the criterion that is met, where the 75% threshold and the fact that there's no mortgage companies, yes. They send 15% of the proceeds for the amount of they determine to be the damage, and then we hold that. The treasurer's office holds those dollars until we're provided proof that they've taken care and repaired the property or demolished it.
Okay, here's what I'm missing. If some of the money is to be given to the UG, will that not impair the homeowner's ability to take care of whatever the damage is, though?
It very well could. We have worked with a number of individuals that have had problems in that area, where if they start, as long as they're showing due diligence, and they should have 85% of the proceeds, and we're only holding 15. So if they make progress with that 85%, we have released those portions of that funding to help them finish the project, just trying to make sure that they're going to complete it.
And let's say the project is satisfactorily completed, what happens to the 15% that we have held
All of it's returned, as well as interest, to the policyholder.
to the policyholder? Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? I guess it would be appropriate for a motion.
Move to approve as submitted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk read the roll, please?
Roll call, Walters,
Aye.
Murgia,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan,
Aye.
Walker.
Aye. The last item on our agenda are applications and transfers requests from the land bank. Mr. Slaughter is here to make a very brief presentation.
Good evening.
They only gave us 15 minutes for this meeting, so we're already a little past.
We started a little late, so
Yeah,
I'll
we
catch
did.
up. We have 5 applications tonight. 4 of them are basically yard extensions, so we'll go through this quickly. We have 2 with Distant Vista Properties for 36 and 38 South Halleck Street. Maria Fernandez is requesting 3014 North 17th, and Mr. Johnson 1716 North 25th Street. This is an aerial for 36 and 38 South Halleck. It's these shaded ones here. These are highlighted properties of the applicant. And those property addresses are 549 Lowell, 41 South 6th Street. The applicant is current on taxes, is no code cases. The appraised value of the 2 properties is roughly about $1,300, and the potential for new taxes would be $25 per year. Those are combined. The next applicant there is for 3014 North 17th Street. The land bank property is this one. There's the applicant's property. Kind of the same spiel here. 3020 is owned by the applicant. No codes, current on taxes. The appraised value of the land bank property is $770, which should generate about approximately $15 in new taxes. Now we have Mr. Johnson, 1716 North 25th. And again, the shaded area is the land bank property. He is the owner at 1718, current, no codes. 340 is the land bank appraised value. He should generate greater than $5 of approximate new taxes. That is a greater than sign. So those are generally the yard extensions we have. We also have a house rehab. I can go right into that. I didn't know if we wanted to separate these out or go on with it. 3023 South 23rd. This is a rehab project, and it's our applicant is Residential Revival. They are in attendance in case there are any questions. This is an overview of the South 23rd neighborhood. Some of the highlights, you got I-35, BNSF Railroad, Merriam Lane up here to the north, and this is South 23rd Circle. There's just a close-up of the property and a pretty good-sized lot. Just a reminder of the conditions, current conditions of the house. There is some mold damage. It has been abandoned. No current utilities going to the property. And just a quick history of it. It was donated to us back in December of last year from Wells Fargo. This was the one you guys approved to be sent to the tech center at KCK. They later came back and said that they would have to pass on the opportunity. And then out of the blue, we were approached by Resident Revival. Hey, this is what we do. You got any properties? Hey, why don't you go look at this one? So they went and looked at it. Their mission is to revitalize homes that have been neglected. Here's 2 examples of property that they've already taken care of. 4008 Holly Street is one that me and Mr. Brockman went and visited. And here's some pictures of that property. Very impressed with what they've done. As you can see, pretty new upscale amenities, very open floor plan, which was pretty neat and would probably work out well with the South 23rd property. This is the other property on Carroll Lane Street. Now a little bit about the property again. The building is appraised at $56,390. The total is $71,000 plus. Through our initial evaluation and inspection, we've come up that there's about 50% damage to the property. So that gave us roughly the value down to $28,000 plus. After some negotiations, we've agreed on a $15,000 selling price to the applicant. They are proposing about a little over 3-month time frame to get this rehab done. And one thing we wanted to point out, the property right next door, 3031, was recently rehabbed and sold for $103,000. Not by them, but it is capable of being done in that neighborhood. I know one of the things that the community college had issues with was the ability to get a property back to that position. So that's all we have for the application part of the presentation.
Question,
Yeah,
Commissioner?
so I just want to know who Residential Revival is. That's my district. I just
Okay.
want to know who it is.
They are available. You guys
Okay,
want to come in?
it's all right. I don't have any questions for you. Okay, and I'm Commissioner Murguia, and hopefully you'll call me. Because I'd like to talk to you about housing. So, and that's my district, so I appreciate what you're doing.
Of course, Commissioner.
Good evening. I'd also like to know, is your rehab, are you looking at all districts of the city for rehab opportunities or only certain districts?
We're looking at all districts. Adam and I were both raised in KCK, so that's where we're kind of focusing on first, but we've done properties in Kansas City, Missouri, the Northland, but we're open to any opportunity that presents itself.
Well, I'm Commissioner Townsend. And after you're through with Commissioner McKee, I would love to speak with you both. Thank you.
And I'll just add that our housing stock is very limited right now, so that's kind of why this fell into this position.
That's
So,
great.
but as we
That's great.
obtain more properties, yes, we hope to obtain more qualified applicants like them.
And you said that the junior college had some concerns about getting the rehab up to the dollar value of some of the other properties.
And I think completing the project, they had some issues with being that close to the train, and I think there was some other liability issues that their board just wasn't comfortable with. And we told them that we'll always be here in case there's other properties, and hopefully something eventually can work out with them, but this just didn't work out.
All right.
Commissioner,
Yes.
just real quick, are you fair market or nonprofit?
Fair market.
Okay.
Why don't you approach the podium and state your name and business address for the record, so everyone in the public will know who you are in case they have a piece of property they want to contact you about.
We'll leave cards. Andrew McLean, my business partner is Adam Galupski. Our business address is currently his home address, 4609 North Main Street, in Kansas City, Missouri. We can leave our contact information and any details anyone wants, but
I think you should. There are certainly opportunities the commissioners know of in their districts that may or may not intrigue you.
And I'm a KCK alumni, so I'll make right for what they walked away from. So we'll fix it up.
But the real question is, where are you from in KCK?
Indian Woods, 86th Street. That's where we both lived until we left for college.
Okay.
Well, we're glad you're taking on this kind of project, and we wish there were a dozen of you working simultaneously to do the same thing.
Well, we'd like to multiply ourselves to act like a dozen if we can get enough properties.
If you'd make sure that the commission gets your contact information.
I'll make sure to pass that on to everybody.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Slaughter. All right.
Thank you.
Commissioners, we have a number of items. We can take them all at one time with one motion, or if any of you have concerns about an item, we'll take that out and vote it separate.
Move to approve all land bank submissions as submitted.
Second?
We have a motion and second. Please read the roll.
Roll call, Walters.
Aye.
Murgia.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
And the last thing we have is your packet had two properties to be considered for transfers to ABC, Argentine Betterment Corp. The first one, 2921 South 53rd, we are pulling that. That will not be under consideration for tonight. So really we have 4714 Vista Drive for consideration to be transferred to them. Here's an aerial. I will point out that this house is no longer standing. And in fact, the funds that we received with the donation of the South 23rd Street went to strategically demo that property. So some goods come from the Wells Fargo program, obviously. But right now, it is completely demoed. The plan eventually will be a new house to be constructed there. We're just wanting to get your guys' approval out of the way so when the transfer actually does take place, we can just bang, bang, get it done instead of waiting until the next calendar to get it on the agenda.
Move to approve as submitted.
Second?
Commissioner?
So I just have a comment for clarity for people. This is being run by the Argentine Betterment Corporation, but just for the record, I have nothing to do with that organization. I'm not the executive director of that, nor do I serve on the board or any sort of paid advisor for them. And just for the record, that's not my district, that's Turner. ABC is doing some courtesy work in assisting the local commissioner, Commissioner Markley, in renovating the Highland Crest area. So just saying that for the record, Christy did a great job on that, though I'm aware of it because I also provide assistance to Commissioner Markley on housing redevelopment.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Walters.
Aye.
Murgia.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye. That concludes the business of the Neighborhood and Community Development Standing Committee. I think Mr. McKiernan.
And I don't see Mr. Albee, but we do have a quorum for the next committee, so we can go ahead and, since we are past the posted time for the beginning of that committee, we'll go ahead and just transition directly into it. We'll welcome everybody to this meeting of the Economic Development and Finance Standing Committee. Public comment is welcome. Anyone who wishes to speak on any item that is on the Standing Committee agenda may do so when that item is up for discussion. You'll have 5 minutes to make your comments. We would ask you to be recognized by a member of the committee. You'll come to the podium in the center of the room to make your comments. We also want to remind everyone to please speak as directly as possible into a microphone if you are presenting or discussing for accurate recording and broadcast purposes. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Albee. Walters.
Here.
Murgia.
Here.
Townsend.
Here.
Walker.
Here.
McKiernan.
Here. Our first item of business is approval of the committee minutes from May 2nd, 2016.
So moved.
Second?
There's a motion and a second to approve as submitted. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say no. Those are approved as submitted. The first item on the committee agenda is a resolution for the issuance of industrial revenue bonds for the Rainbow Village project. And I believe Mr. Goff will be presenting that this evening.
I am Mr. Marlon Goff. Good evening, commissioners,
Good evening.
staff, administration. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our developer group. They're here. If you'd like to join me at the table. So we'll go ahead and make introductions for the record.
Good evening. Again, Hunter Harris. I'm a partner with Lane 4 Property Group. Have been before you a few times now on this project, so thanks for seeing us once again.
And Evan Fitz with Polsonelli Law Firm here on behalf of Lane 4 Property Group.
Right, so tonight's item before you is essentially in keeping with the development agreement that was approved on June the 9th and adopted by our ordinance 3216. So essentially, as part of that incentive package, the financing calls for the issuance of industrial revenue bonds. We have the resolution of intent as that first step, and we're asking for that item to be advanced until the full commission meeting on July 28th. Have a presentation queued up if we want to walk through it to revisit the project. Also available to stand for any questions.
Well, this is a project that we have seen as it has evolved, and we have, as a commission then, had the public hearing on the TIF district and approved the TIF district. So really, this is just a formality in terms of issuing the bonds, correct?
Yes, yes. As part of that issuance requirement, we have to adopt or approve a resolution of intent. That notice gets published and part of the statutory requirements for that financing.
Unless a member of the committee has a specific request to see or hear part of that presentation, I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second?
There's a motion and a second to approve the issuance of the IRBs as submitted. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Roll call. Walters.
Aye.
Murguia.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That brings us to item number 2, which is a resolution authorizing the unified government to request a brownfield area-wide planning grant from the EPA. Angela Harshbarger from Economic Development will present that to us.
Good evening, Commissioners, staff. Marlon Goff will be helping with this as well. We're here this evening to present a grant opportunity that would allow us to expand our brownfields program. The EPA provides grant funds to assist communities in addressing brownfield sites. So those sites where the expansion, the redevelopment, the reuse could be complicated because of the presence or potential presence of hazardous substances or contaminants. So the EPA does have some different types of grant funds that are available. They provide assessment grants, which help with inventory, sampling, those types of activities. There are cleanup and remediation grants available. A revolving loan fund grant that enables state, local entities to provide low-interest loans to assist with cleanup activities. And then the reuse and planning activity grant is actually the one that we have for you this evening. But before we get into that, we did want to provide an update on where we're at with our brownfields program and the grants that we're currently managing. So Marlene's going to help with that.
Thanks, Angela. So over the past several years, we've been fortunate enough to have at our disposal some resource and brownfield funds available to assist projects. So quick snapshot and some highlights of the activities that we have. I think we skipped the slide. Sorry. The current funding in place with the 1KC Coalition. So that group includes the Unified Government, City of Kansas City, Missouri, and the Mid-America Regional Council. We'll also note that Tetra Tech is our environmental science consulting company that actually performs the environmental work. So below is just a summary of to date the projects that we've been able to assist with this current assessment grant. We also have a balance of just over $30,000 remaining. So we still have some funding available to assist projects within our target area.
And so the grant opportunity that we have is the area-wide planning grant. It provides funding and technical assistance to help communities with the challenges that we face with the brownfield sites. Certainly, you know, a large number of brownfield sites in a confined area, it's going to have a significant impact on the social, the environmental prosperity of that community. And so if this funding were awarded, it is a project amount of up to $200,000, and the grant period would be for up to 2 years. We did want to talk about some of the eligible and ineligible uses of this grant money. So ineligible uses It is a strategic planning grant only. It would not allow us to do any type of assessment or cleanup activities under this grant. Also, any of the work that's done does have to directly relate to the project area that's going to be identified as part of the grant application. The eligible uses then is community engagement, involvement to address any concerns, priorities, and then use that information to develop some possible reuses for that project area. It will also allow to conduct research and technical assistance as it relates to gaining further information about our project area. Ultimately, it should result in an area-wide plan being developed for strategically how do we move forward with, at a later time, assessment, cleanup, reuse, and revitalization. A couple of things that we wanted to be sure to note about the grant criteria. As I mentioned, there does have to be a specific project area that's defined. Within that project area, we have to have one or more catalyst high-priority brownfield sites. EPA defines that as being those sites which, once remediated and reused, would spur further revitalization in the project area. Also, with regard to the size of the project area, the EPA highly encourages that it be appropriate and reasonably sized. The example that they give is that rather than targeting, say, an entire district, that we would go after a neighborhood or a corridor or an avenue that could have a significant impact and change in that community. One other piece we wanted to mention, letters of commitment. So we would be reaching out to community-based organizations to provide some resources along with this grant opportunity as well.
So the target area and being mindful of some of the criteria that Angela just pointed out, right? So different from what we customarily approach with comprehensive strategic master planning. This opportunity is really specific to brownfields and corridors where we clearly see or can clearly point out some catalyst sites. And so with that in mind, what you see essentially illustrated, we see some of the landmarks that effectively outline the Quindaro Boulevard corridor. From a historical context, you also note the geography essentially encompasses much of the footprint of the historic township, right? And to that end, you know, we actually are looking at this opportunity strategically in the sense that there are some ongoing and active preservation activities being pursued by a couple of community groups. Just earlier this week, we had an opportunity, last week we had an opportunity, members of our development staff, our Parks and Recreation Director, members from the county administration, we met with a local consulting firm, Freedom's Frontier Heritage Area, right? So they're providing technical assistance and consultation to a group who's actively pursuing national landmark status for the Historic Ruins District. And so we feel like aligning our efforts with respects to some of the environmental and brownfield sites that we see comparing in this corridor, and some of the preceding sites we'll begin to show some of the current conditions that are at play. So with this map, you know, and I've heard Commissioner talk about a heat map. I heard this reference. So essentially everything in yellow is representing a parcel that's currently eligible for our delinquent tax sale. Parcels highlighted in red are what we already have in our land bank.
You might have highlighted the other instead.
Yeah. So here's an example again of some of the blight, some of the economic and physical deteriorated conditions with a lot of the commercial properties on that corridor. You see some recent investment in a new gas station and service station. There's certainly conditions with some of the other commercial properties really need attention. Again, we commonly have done several phase 1 assessments for businesses like dry cleaners, especially with their historical use of drying agents and solvents and the potential impact on groundwater contamination. But then we also see those businesses just across the street from a community center, residential townhomes. There's an elementary school a block or so from here. But what's not present on this corridor, for example, is an active bank branch. There isn't a grocery store or market. So one of the catalyst sites we zeroed in on is a property located near the historic ruin site. It's the site of the former Douglas Hospital and Bryant Butler Kitchen. I know our public works staff in the past have assisted the property owner with installing some barriers to prevent from illegal dumping. You know, we've had some issue with squatting and homeless, you know, living inside of this facility. And
Who owns that property?
I'm sorry?
Who owns that property at present?
The owner of record is Village East LLC, so it's an LLC. It isn't owned by a private individual. Although we have had some meetings with representatives for the ownership group about their interest and willingness to make use of some of our brownfields funds to assess the property and then maybe engage in some redevelopment as part of this process.
Are they paying the taxes?
I would note that this parcel actually, as you can kind of see it here near the edge of the river, it is tax delinquent.
I can't see where you're.
So it is, sorry, if I can get my cue. So we'd be talking about this parcel here.
Where it's yellow?
Yeah.
So it's tax sale eligible?
Yes.
How many years delinquent is it?
So Patrick, is 3 years required for a property? Yeah, so at least 3 years of delinquent taxes are required to be eligible for tax sale. But again, based on its proximity, right, to both some of the recent investment we've made in the form of streets, sidewalks, sewers, the overlook structure, we've done some restoration work here to the memorial. So the Memorial Plaza is actually carved out, and it's partial to the land bank. The property in the foreground is the catalyst site we're talking about, the former commercial structure. This site here is on Brown Avenue. It's the site of a former auto service center. There's a restaurant here, a pad site, and then, believe it or not, a small motel complex in the rear. You know, it's also vacant and tax delinquent, been abandoned for several years. We've recently tracked down the phone number of the property owner. Again, we're going to invite her to be a part of the process to take advantage of both the existing assessment grant we have, but also for the planning and reuse opportunity we're pursuing. And so I'll turn this back over to Angela to kind of recap the requirements for the grant.
So actually the grant deliverables, ultimately what they're looking for is the community engagement component, understanding what the concerns are, the priorities are, according to the community, using those to inform the reuse scenarios that will be developed, and ultimately developing an area-wide implementation strategic plan. How do we move forward with assessment, cleanup, reuse, revitalization? Some timeline pieces to this. The grant application is due August 10th. Awarded grants will be announced in January 2017, with the projects actually beginning in March next year. So what we're requesting is that this be moved forward to the July 28th full commission meeting, where we'll seek approval of a resolution authorizing the county administrator to submit the 2017 Brownfields area-wide planning grant application.
Any comments or questions, Commissioner Townsend?
Thank you. What I want to have clear in my mind is exactly what we could do again with the funds from this grant. So I'm going to highlight a couple of things, and you can just tell me yes or no or whatever we got. Can we acquire property?
No.
Out there, okay. Can we build or help building out there, or help someone who may want to develop out there something that the neighborhood would want, or would help in the restoration or maintenance of historical buildings or areas out there?
We cannot.
Cannot. Can we do cleanup? Because when we hear brownfields, I think of cleanup. Can you do demolition if we own those properties or had tax sale eligible properties?
Not under this grant.
So this would pay for what I would call engagement and planning kind of things, getting the community involved, that type of thing?
Correct, in addition to doing some market research, looking at the history of the property, and developing some of the information that way to be used then later as part of perhaps moving on with an assessment process.
Okay, and we could get approximately what, 200,000
Correct.
total over the 2 years, or 200,000 each year?
Total over the 2 years.
Yeah, I would add to that. So this is a planning grant, right? So the fund would essentially be used to engage the community residents in the target area, the larger target area, about what ideas for reuse and redevelopment of those identified brownfield sites. But I would also add that I feel like we have within our existing toolkit of development incentives to help projects do just what you described, for strategic acquisition, for demolition. And in our current grant, we actually can use some of the assessment funding to say we need to remove underground storage tank. I know one of the projects we did early in the year, we were able to leverage and assist in that regard. So I feel like a combination of the existing resources we have, coupled with this opportunity to do the strategic planning and community engagement around what they would like to see, how they would like to be part of that redevelopment process, is what this opportunity represents.
Well, I'm in favor of it. I just wanted to make it have clear in my mind, and hopefully in the minds of those who may be watching this, what we can and can't do with that. So just because we may get this grant, you know, there's not going to be a building boom immediately. It's engagement and planning, that kind of thing. So I would move to approve the request to have it fast-tracked as requested by staff.
Second?
There's a motion and a second, but Commissioner Walker, you have some additional discussion?
Does this plan provide a gateway to other federal funding? We do this, then this is in the federal government's view, step one, and then create eligibility for additional grants?
Right. So I mentioned the current community work underway with the National Freedoms Frontier Organization. They're based in Lawrence. So one of the things, they're engaged with the National Park Service, which is under the umbrella of the Department of Interior, about that federal historic landmark status. So with that National Park Service and that potential designation, absolutely there's that potential for additional funding around those efforts.
I mean, I have to say that some of the things you have shown us, other than the John Brown statue, I mean, it doesn't seem like the plan is anything but get a bulldozer and bulldoze it into the ground and take it and dump it, depending on what type of material is there. I mean, it seems, I mean, I'm not opposed to it, but if it's not a key to additional federal money to actually implement a plan, we'll have a nice plan, and then we'll be expected to raise the money to implement the plan. I mean, I guess I'm not hearing you say that this will, yeah, I mean, clearly the John Brown statue is a unique location, and has historical significance. That area does, but I don't know where the money's going to come to clean up those properties after we have a plan that'll tell us we need to clean up these properties. So if I sound cynical, it's because I am. Okay?
Commissioner Murguia, then Commissioner Townsend.
So I seconded the motion, so I'm fine with the grant also, but, you know, I've been around a long time as commissioner, so I'm compelled to, you know, shed a little light on what happens when commissioners are involved with planning for my peers that are newer commissioners. Anytime you create a plan and you engage community in that planning process, you create expectations. And again, I don't have anything wrong with this, but I would agree with what Commissioner Walker said. You sometimes have to be very careful about getting the community together and making plans for things if there's no way to pay for those things moving forward. So I second the motion. I want to be supportive. I just also don't want to set up my fellow commissioners to fail, and I also don't want to set up those communities to continue to be disappointed that things aren't moving forward like they want them to.
Commissioner Townsend?
Yeah, I appreciate the sentiments expressed by Commissioner Walker and Commissioner Murguia, and that goes to why I asked, so I have in my mind specifically what we can and can't do with these funds. But I'm looking at this as the Elvis approach. It's now or never for some of these things. And if we can get a grant that will put us in a position of bringing the community together, those people who actually own property in there, those people in the neighborhood who want to see something done with that historical area, I believe that now is the time to at least come up with the plan. I think that would better situate us to know what we can do possibly and better target where we might go to seek funds. If we had shown the shot just due north of that statue, you have the overlook. And that's a tremendous asset, very underutilized because of the other things that surround it. So I know that there are a lot of individual stakeholders and property owners there, and Commissioner Walker gets to the heart of a point that I've had a discussion with some of the people who own. There's so many owners over there. I think this is a good time to sort some of this thing out, to try to come together with some type of direction that all of those landowners, hopefully, and the citizens around there can support, and we can target where we may go. Just baby steps, but now or never. So, thank you.
Any further discussion? So we have a motion and a second to authorize the request for a brownfield area-wide planning grant from the EPA. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Walters?
Aye.
Murguia?
Aye.
Townsend?
Aye.
Walker?
Aye.
McKiernan?
Aye. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Our third and final item on the agenda tonight is an ordinance authorizing the issuance of Community Improvement District sales tax revenue bonds. And I believe Kathleen Von Atchen will present that.
Thank you, Commissioner. And so similar to the previous item, this CID district and the developers agreement was approved in a prior commission meeting. So at this point now we're ready to proceed with financing the project, and so this would be, we recommend that you approve the ordinance or forward to the commission approval of the ordinance to issue the bonds. The bonds total $14 million, and they're to be paid back by a 1/6 cent sales tax in that district within the legends. The project itself is going to pay for a 3-story parking garage that extends beyond along Parallel and what's that parkway? The
Village West Parkway.
The Village West Parkway, that's right. And then on top of it, the developer has agreed to by the way, the parking garage will build about 350 parking spaces. On top of that parking garage, there'll be an apartment complex that will have 240 luxury units that are going to be going at market rate rent. So, and that piece is being paid for by the developer. So tonight's action is just to look at the parking garage portion of the financing, which is $14 million.
So we have
Move approval.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve as submitted. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Roll call. Walters?
Aye.
Murguia?
Aye.
Townsend?
Aye.
Walker?
Aye.
McKiernan?
Aye. Thank you very much. That's the final item on our agenda. There being no further business before this committee, this meeting is adjourned. We will have our budget workshop coming up, and we should give ourselves about 15 minutes of transition time for people to make their way in and to reset all of the broadcast equipment. So we will plan on starting our budget workshop meeting at 10 minutes after 6 o'clock, at least according to that clock. Thank you. We are adjourned.